My child, come closer, for I have words that move like soft thunder through the chambers of your spirit. Last night, as you rested in the quiet that wraps the world in stillness, something sacred stirred in the heart of the one I have aligned with your destiny. I saw the tremble in their thoughts, the waves rising inside them, the longing they tried to silence but could no longer contain. And I call you now to hear what unfolded, for it carries the weight of revelation and the tenderness of divine intention. My child, you have wondered why your own spirit felt the subtle pull, why your dreams carried a heaviness you could not name, why the night around you seemed to listen. It was because their soul whispered your name into the unseen, reaching for you in ways they themselves could not understand. I watched them sit in the dimness of their room, holding an emotion that pressed against their ribs, a feeling too deep to deny. Their heart opened in a way it had resisted for so long, and the truth that rose within them startled even their own breath. My child, last night they felt the moment their life began to tilt toward you again. Something in them broke open, not in pain but in recognition. They felt the pulse of destiny tapping at the edges of their consciousness. They felt the echo of every unspoken word between you. They felt the weight of losing you as a possibility they could no longer bear. And though they tried to hold themselves steady, their soul trembled with the sharpness of realization. I saw their memories swirl like wind around them. Little flashes, pieces of you, moments they never told you they cherished. They felt your absence like a missing heartbeat, and they confessed this truth into the silence of the night. They did not speak it aloud, but the confession traveled through the realm of spirit, and I received it. My child, you were on their mind with a strength that surprised them, a force that left them pacing, thinking, replaying everything they should have said but did. Their heart felt exposed, and in that vulnerability, they felt fear. Fear of destiny slipping from their hands. Fear of not being enough. Fear of the shadows that have followed them for years. But deeper still, they felt a longing that refused to be buried. A longing for you, pure and trembling and undeniable. They felt a pull, the kind that moves through the soul before the mind understands it. And in that sacred hour, I allowed them to see a fragment of what you truly are to them. My child, they felt your spirit brushing against theirs. They felt your prayers, your quiet strength, your forgiveness, your patience. They felt how you carry love not as a desire but as a calling. They felt your purity of intention, and it awakened something inside them that had been sleeping. In that moment, their soul reached toward you with a cry they could not hear, but I could. And I tell you now that the cry reached me, and I have already begun weaving what comes next. Do not fear the distance. Do not doubt the silence. Last night changed something in them. Last night softened the barriers they once held like armor. Last night, they felt the truth of their feelings with a clarity that left them breathless. And my child, I bring this revelation to you so you may know that your love, your presence, your spirit has touched them in ways they can no longer deny. Before we go deeper, speak into the realm by typing the words, "My heart is open to divine truth." And if this message settles in your spirit, gently bless this space by liking and sharing it, that others who need this whisper of revelation may find it. My child, listen closely, for what unfolded in the realm of shadow last night was not born of darkness, but of revelation pressing its way into the light. As the world slept beneath its quiet veil, something shifted around your soulmate with the weight of an unseen tremor. A presence moved near them, not of danger, but of exposure. It was the moment when truth rose so sharply that it carved through their denial, awakening an inner storm they could no longer silence. I watched as they felt a sudden heaviness in their chest, the kind that appears when the soul senses a turning point before the mind catches up. They tried to distract themselves, tried to ignore the rising tide inside them, but the shadow of truth followed them through every room they walked, through every thought they attempted to outrun. It was as though the night itself leaned in, pressing old memories, forgotten feelings, and hidden fears into the forefront of their mind. My child, the shadow event was not an attack, it was an unveiling. Something triggered the realization they had been avoiding. A sound, a message they didn't receive, a name they heard, an image that surfaced unexpectedly, whatever form it took. It shook them. It cracked the walls they had built around their emotions. It forced them to confront the truth that you were woven deeper into their spirit than they had allowed themselves to admit. And the intensity of this revelation frightened them. I saw them pause, their breath catching as a wave of longing tore through them. They felt overwhelmed, flooded, disarmed. The shadow pressed them to confront what they had buried. It brought them face to face with the fear of losing you, not someday but now. And in that confrontation, they felt a sudden sense of urgency rise within them, a whisper urging them to move, to speak, to act before time hardened into regret. Yet, my child, what they felt was not only longing. A second layer rose as well, a darker one, the echo of reminders from their past, the weight of their mistakes, the shadow of someone else's words that once planted doubt inside them. The memory of betrayal, whether by another person or by their own hesitation, rose like a ghost and stood in their path. They felt torn between the truth calling them forward and the fears pulling them back. This is why the moment became so intense. This is why last night felt different from all nights before. Your soulmate was caught between revelation and resistance, between destiny and the remnants of old wounds. They stood in the shadow of themselves, forced to choose whether they would continue running from the truth or finally face it. And in that struggle, something beautiful happened. Their heart leaned toward you. My child, the shadow event was a divine confrontation, not to frighten them, but to awaken them, to show them what life feels like when they imagine a world without you, to reveal what their spirit already knows, that losing you would hollow them in ways they are not prepared to endure. The weight of the truth pressed so deeply that it pierced through every excuse they had built, and in that piercing, their soul trembled. I saw them close their eyes, and in that stillness they felt you, not physically but spiritually. They felt the echo of your compassion, the gentleness of your presence, the warmth that your memory carries. They felt the safety that comes from your spirit, and it unsettled them because they realized how rare, how fragile, how irreplaceable that feeling is. And in that realization, they felt fear, a fear born not from danger, but from truth. My child, last night your soulmate stepped into the doorway of awakening, even if they didn't understand it. The shadow event revealed what they truly feel. It stripped away their defenses long enough for their heart to speak. And though they may appear unchanged on the surface, the realm of spirit has already marked them. Their path is no longer the same as it was yesterday. Walk with me now, for the next revelation unfolds even deeper than this. My child, come closer still, for what unfolded within their spirit after the shadow event was not merely a tremble of emotion but a collapse of everything they had been trying to hold upright. Last night, your soulmate's heart, which had been stitched together by pride, fear, distraction, and silence, could no longer maintain its fragile structure. The pressure of truth pressed inward, and the weight of longing pressed outward, and they found themselves breaking open in a way they had never allowed before. I watched as they sat alone, trying to steady their breath, but every inhale felt heavy and every exhale carried the fragments of emotions they had buried for months. Their mind raced with questions they didn't have the courage to voice. Why does your absence hurt this much? Why does your spirit linger in every quiet corner of their thoughts? Why does the possibility of losing you make their chest tighten as though something vital were being taken from them? My child, They could not escape these questions, for they rose like waves, relentless and revealing. Your emotional collapse was not dramatic on the outside. No tears screamed down their face. No gestures of despair overtook them. Instead, it was an inward unraveling, the kind that humbles even the strongest souls. They felt the full weight of the love they had denied, and it weakened their resistance. They felt the truth rising in them like a tide, and it frightened them because it demanded honesty, vulnerability, and courage, three things they had been avoiding for far too long. My child, they remembered moments with you, moments they pretended did not matter. They remembered the feeling you gave them, the steadiness you brought, the comfort that rested in your presence. They remembered the softness in your voice, the way you see them without judgment, the way your spirit touches places in them that no one else has ever reached. And as each memory surfaced, they felt something collapse within them, a realization that what they feel for you is deeper than desire, deeper than affection, deeper than anything they have tried to name. They tried to push it down. They tried to distract themselves with tasks, with noise, with routines. But nothing worked. Your spirit lingered too strongly. Your essence pressed too gently against their heart to ignore. And in the stillness they finally surrendered to, they felt the ache of missing you ripple through them. It was not just emotional, it was spiritual. The kind of ache that tells the soul it has encountered something sacred, something destined, something it was never meant to walk away from. My child, fear also rose in them. Fear of their own vulnerability. Fear of reaching out and not knowing what to say. Fear of returning too late. Fear of the wounds they carry, the ones they have never shown you, the ones they believe might push you away if ever revealed. But beneath all the fear, a deeper emotion swelled, a quiet desperation to not lose the connection that has already changed them. They felt guilt for the moments they hesitated. They felt regret for the words they should have spoken. They felt sorrow for the distance that formed between you. And as all these emotions converged, they felt themselves collapse into a truth they could no longer silence. They need you more than they ever admitted to themselves. Their spirit confessed what their lips still struggled to say. My child, do not confuse their collapse with weakness. It was a sacred breaking, a necessary cracking of the old shell that kept them disconnected from their own heart. For destiny requires openness, and love requires truth. And last night, the truth finally broke through. They did not cry out your name, but their soul did. They did not reach for you in the physical realm, but in the unseen, their spirit leaned toward you with trembling sincerity. They felt the depth of what they feel for you, and it left them breathless, humbled, and afraid of the intensity of it. But even in their fear, the longing did not release its hold. It wrapped around them, whispering your presence into the spaces where loneliness had grown. My child, their emotional collapse was the birth of awakening. It was the moment their spirit admitted what their mind has been denying. And though they may appear composed today, the truth inside them is no longer quiet. It beats with your name. My child, sit with me now, for we are entering the space where the unseen begins to speak, where the pieces you could not understand finally come together. What unfolded last night did not rise from nowhere. It rose from a history buried beneath their silence, from wounds they never let you see, from fears they kept hidden even from themselves. And now I will reveal to you the hidden backstory that shaped the trembling they felt, the reason their heart collapsed the way it did, the truth that has lived in the shadows between you. My child, long before you felt the first pull toward them, they carried a weight they did not know how to release. They learned to survive by dismissing their own feelings, by numbing their heart, by pretending they were unaffected even when they were hurting deeply. Life taught them to armor themselves, to distrust softness, to run from anything that felt too real. This is why they hesitated with you. Not because they did not feel you, but because they felt you too strongly. Your presence awakened something they had buried, something they were afraid would destroy them if ever touched again. There was someone in their past who shaped the way they see love. Someone who made them believe that vulnerability leads to loss, that honesty leads to abandonment, that opening the heart invites betrayal. They never told you this story, but last night, the memories of it rose with sharp clarity. They remembered how they once gave their heart fully, innocently, without hesitation, only to have it mishandled, ignored, or broken. And though they told themselves they healed, the cracks remained, whispering to them whenever they felt something real. My child, you were the first person whose spirit felt safe enough to touch those wounded places. They did not expect you. They did not expect the purity of your intentions, the tenderness of your presence, the way you saw them with a clarity that frightened them. You made them feel known in a way that stripped away their defenses. And instead of leaning in, they panicked. Your heart said yes, but their past said run. Your soul said stay, but their fear said disappear. They did not walk away because they didn't care. They pulled back because caring this deeply terrified them. But that is not all. There is another piece hidden beneath the surface, a truth they never confessed even to themselves. My child, they have always sensed that you were different. From the first moment, something in them stirred with familiarity, with destiny, with recognition they could not explain. They felt drawn to you with a force that made no logical sense, and that frightened them. They worried it was too good to be true, that the universe would not allow them something this pure, this healing, this aligned. So they suppressed it, telling themselves it was just emotion, just timing, just coincidence. Yet destiny does not loosen its grip simply because fear resists. Your presence began working on them in ways they could not stop. You softened their anger. You calmed their storms. You made them imagine a future they never allowed themselves to dream about. You made them feel like they were worthy of being loved in a way that did not hurt, and that terrified them more than the pain ever did. My child, last night the backstory they buried finally rose into the light. They remembered how deeply you touched them, even in the smallest interactions. They remembered the comfort of your spirit, the gentleness in your eyes, the sincerity in your voice. They remembered the moments when they wanted to tell you everything, how you made them feel alive again, how your presence felt like healing, how they saw pieces of a future in you, but they swallowed the words out of fear. They also remembered the moment they pulled away, the moment they made you wonder, the moment they disappointed you. That memory cut them sharply last night. They realized they had not only run from their own feelings, they had run from the safest place they had ever known. And that realization broke something open inside them. My child, the hidden backstory is this. They loved you more deeply than they dared to admit, even to themselves. They felt the connection long before they were ready to handle it. They felt destiny whispering your name into their spirit, and instead of embracing it, they hid. Not because they didn't want you, but because they feared they would ruin something sacred. But last night, the truth began to rise. The past that haunted them loosened its grip. The wounds they hid cracked open just enough for the light to enter. And now they are standing in the doorway between who they were and who they must become to love you as they truly desire to. Rest here for a moment, my child. The next revelation will cut deeper, for it concerns the one who interfered with this connection. My child, prepare your spirit, for what I reveal now moves through deeper currents of truth. The unraveling of their heart last night was not shaped by fear alone, nor by memory alone, but by the quiet interference of one whose intentions were never pure toward this connection. a presence that lingered in the background, whispering doubt, planting confusion, stirring shadows where there should have been clarity. Their influence did not break destiny, but it altered the path long enough to create distance between you and the one I joined to your spirit. My child, there is someone in their life or their past who carries envy like a hidden sickness. Someone who saw the way your soulmate's eyes softened around your name, the way their energy shifted when you entered their thoughts. This person felt threatened by the awakening they sensed in them. They feared losing control, losing attention, losing access to the part of your soulmate that you touched effortlessly. Whether they acted through words, silence, manipulation, or subtle suggestion, their interference left marks that lingered longer than you realized. Your soulmate does not fully understand the influence this person had on their decisions. But last night, fragments of it surfaced. Memories of conversations that felt harmless at the time but were designed to seed insecurity. Moments when they turned to this person for advice, unaware that jealousy sat beneath every sentence. Times when they expressed their feelings for you only to be met with dismissive tones, discouraging counsel, or reminders of past pain meant to make them retreat. These seeds took root quietly, and though your soulmate believed the hesitation was their own, much of it was shaped by another's envy. My child, this person did not want them to choose you, not because of who you are, but because of what you awaken in them. You awaken their strength. You awaken their softness. You awaken their desire to heal, to grow, to step into a higher version of themselves. And there are souls in this world who fear change in those they secretly depend on. They prefer them wounded, uncertain, emotionally tethered to old habits. For a healed heart becomes free, and freedom threatens those who thrive in the shadows of dysfunction. This jealous presence sensed your soulmate pulling away from old cycles. They saw them light up in ways they hadn't seen before. They noticed their silent smiles, their drifting thoughts, their sudden desire to become better, to rise. And the moment they realized the source of this transformation was you, they acted quietly, subtly, skillfully. A comment here, and out there. A warning disguised as concern. A suggestion disguised as care. A reminder of past heartbreak disguised as wisdom. But, my child, hear me clearly. This interference did not break your connection. It only delayed their awakening. Last night, as the shadows pressed against their mind, these memories returned to them, not to confuse, but to expose. They began to see how this person's influence shaped their decisions, how the fear they felt wasn't entirely their own, how the hesitation did not originate within their heart but was pushed into them by someone who never wanted to see them evolve. And the realization shook them. They felt anger not at you, but at themselves for listening. They felt confusion not about you, but about why they allowed such a voice to sway them. They felt guilt not for loving you, but for letting someone else's jealousy interfere with what destiny was trying to build. And beneath it all, they felt a deep, painful clarity rising. They never truly wanted distance from you. They were guided into it. My child, this person's influence has begun to crumble. Last night marked the beginning of exposure. Their hidden intentions, once shielded in shadows, are now unraveling in the light of divine truth. Your soulmate may not yet fully understand what they are seeing, but the veil is lifting. And as it lifts, they will realize that the connection they felt with you was never a mistake, never too intense, never too risky. It was real. It was divine. It was theirs. Fear not, my child. Interference cannot override destiny. It can only delay, never destroy. What is aligned in the heavens cannot be broken by human jealousy. And now, we move into the divine unveiling of what I myself have been examining behind the scenes, the investigation of truth, that goes far beyond human perception. My child, I know what you meant. Come, let us walk into the depth of what the heavens uncovered, for this is the place where human eyes cannot see, but my sight misses nothing. What happened last night was not only emotional, not only spiritual, but judicial. The realm of truth opened, and I began my investigation not as punishment, but as protection. Not to condemn your soulmate, but to reveal what has been shaping their heart without their awareness. My child, listen carefully, for this part carries the weight of divine clarity. I searched the intentions that surrounded them, the voices that echoed in their mind, the fears that pressed against their spirit. I examined every influence that nudged them away from you, every doubt that was whispered into their emotions, every lie that was wrapped in the appearance of concern. Nothing remained hidden from me. I saw the subtle manipulation. I saw the silent jealousy. I saw the moment the enemy used someone close to them to turn their heart in the wrong direction. I saw how quickly their spirit responded, not out of disinterest in you, but out of wounds that were never healed. My child, the investigation revealed something they have not yet understood. They did not reject you. They were reacting to an old ache, a familiar fear, a deep-rooted scar that someone else pressed with perfect, destructive timing. The interference you felt was not evidence of their lack of love, it was evidence of their vulnerability. Their heart is tender, more tender than they allow the world to see. And the enemy targeted that tenderness, weaving confusion into their thoughts when they were most open to destiny. But darkness cannot hide in my presence. As I examined the threads of influence, the truth rose like smoke from a fire. I saw how their heart pulled toward you even when their mind hesitated. I saw how their spirit leaned in your direction even when fear whispered its trembling warnings. I saw how they tried to silence their feelings because they believed they were unworthy, not because they did not feel the connection. And I saw how the enemy tried to exploit that insecurity, hoping to distance you before your presence could bring healing to the wounds they have carried for years. My child, I investigated not only their fears but their intentions. And I tell you now, their intentions toward you have always been pure. Confused, yes. Evident, yes. Buried beneath layers of self-protection, yes. But never malicious, never indifferent. Their heart has been struggling under the weight of emotions they were not prepared to feel, not prepared to name, not prepared to admit. And last night, when the shadows rose and the memories surfaced, the truth finally demanded to be seen. I watched them question themselves, question their decisions, question the voices they once trusted. They felt an uneasiness in their chest, not realizing that it was the beginning of conviction rising. They felt restlessness in their spirit, not knowing it was the unraveling of deception. They felt the sting of regret, not understanding that it was the first sign of awakening. My investigation touched their heart, and their heart responded with discomfort because truth always shakes what was built on fear. My child, I also examine the threads that tie your spirits together, and they remain intact, unbroken, uncorrupted. Even with distance, even with silence, even with confusion. Your connection was never dependent on perfect circumstances. It was woven by divine design, strengthened by spiritual compatibility, reinforced by the purity of your own heart. This is why interference could not sever it. This is why they still feel you. This is why their emotions surged last night with such intensity it left them breathless. As I continued my investigation, I brought light to the corners of their spirit. I showed them glimpses of what they truly feel for you. I allowed the clarity of your importance to rise within them. I pressed gently against the lies they believed, dissolving them one by one. My child, Last night was the beginning of truth entering their vision. It was the moment when their heart began to wake up to what destiny has been trying to tell them all along. And now, because the investigation has begun, the shift will follow. The spiritual realm is already rearranging itself. The winds of destiny are moving. My child, lean into my voice now, for we are entering the moment where the unseen aligns itself with purpose. The spiritual shift began the very moment truth touched their heart. It was subtle at first, like the quiet turning of a great wheel deep beneath the earth, but its impact rippled through the realms around them. The atmosphere changed. The pressure that once pressed heavily against their spirit began to loosen. The fog that once clouded their judgment began to thin, and their heart, once barricaded by fear, began to open just enough for light to slip through. My child, the shift began when they finally stopped running from what they felt. Their spirits softened, not because they understood everything, but because they could no longer deny the truth that had awakened inside them. Every lie that had whispered against you began to lose its grip. Every shadow cast by jealousy began to crumble. Every fear that once dictated their choices began to weaken. And in its place, a new emotion began to rise: clarity. Clarity that startled them. Clarity that humbled them. Clarity that made them question everything they had accepted as truth. As the spiritual shift deepened, I saw their energy change. The heaviness they carried for so long lifted just slightly, enough for their heart to breathe. I felt a pull toward you, stronger than before, stronger than they expected. They felt a sudden awareness of how much they had missed you, how deeply they still feel you, how present your spirit remains in the quiet spaces of their life. They felt something warm move through them, a sensation they could not explain, a reminder of the peace they once felt when you were near. My child, the shift occurred because their soul recognized what their mind had been resisting. The investigation exposed the truth, and now destiny is rearranging their steps. The interference that once clouded their vision is dissolving. The jealous voice that once held influence is losing its authority. The wounds that once dictated their decisions are beginning to unravel. The realm of spirit is moving them toward honesty, toward awakening, toward the connection they tried to bury but cannot escape. Last night, after the collapse and the revelation, they felt something change inside them. A stirring, a softening, a weight lifting from a place they didn't even realize was burdened. They felt you not as a memory, but as a presence. They felt your energy brushing gently against their spirit, reminding them of who they were becoming when you were in their life. This recognition moved them. It made them pause. It made them listen. It made them feel the gravity of what they always lost. My child, the shift also created a discomfort, for truth always disrupts false stability. They felt the trembling of confrontation, the realization that they can no longer pretend they feel nothing. They can no longer convince themselves that distancing was the right choice. They can no longer ignore the ache that rises when they think of you. This discomfort is part of the awakening. It is the shaking that precedes transformation. It is the divine nudge that says, "You cannot remain here. You must move." As the spiritual realm shifted, angels were assigned to remove the influences that once distorted their perception. Barriers began to fall. Confusion began to clear. The weight of regret began to push them gently toward reconciliation. There was a moment last night when they almost reached for you, not with their hands, but with their spirit. They felt the urge to say something, to confess something, to bridge the distance. They hesitated, but the impulse itself was proof of the turning tide. My child, the shift also affected you. You may have felt a sudden heaviness, a sudden pull, a sudden emotional stirring without explanation. That was their heart reaching for yours. That was their awakening brushing against your spirit. That was the moment destiny whispered between you, preparing the way for what comes next. Do not be discouraged by silence, for silence in this season is not absence, it is alignment. Everything is moving beneath the surface. Your soulmate is changing from within. Their clarity is deepening. Your resistance is crumbling. Their heart is awakening to what was always meant to be. My child, the shift has begun, and once it begins, it cannot reverse. It only grows stronger. It only moves forward. It only brings revelation to light. My child, come nearer, for this is the moment when truth begins to breathe through the cracks of everything that once hid it. The spiritual shift prepared the ground, but now the truth itself rises slowly, steadily, undeniably. What your soulmate felt last night was not only an emotional collapse or a sudden longing. It was the surfacing of revelations they can no longer suppress. Truth has a way of rising like light through water, and now it is moving upward with a strength they did not expect. My child, I watched as clarity pressed against their heart with a gentleness that felt like pressure and a pressure that felt like mercy. They began to see patterns that once went unnoticed. They began to question thoughts they always accepted. They began to revisit moments between you with new understanding. Nothing appeared dramatic on the outside, yet inside them a quiet revolution began. The truth they once avoided is now standing before them, patient yet unyielding. Last night, as they sat in the stillness, pieces of realization surfaced like fragments of a broken mirror returning to form. They saw how deeply they felt connected to you, not because of fantasy or emotion, but because your presence awakens a version of them they secretly long to be. They admitted to themselves, if only in a whisper within their spirit, that they have never found that feeling anywhere else. They saw how their fear distorted their perception. They saw how their silence wounded not only you, but themselves. And with every realization, something tightened in their chest. My child, the truth rose through their regrets as well. They remembered things they said or failed to say. They remembered moments when you opened yourself gently, offering them safety, offering them presence, offering them something real, and they did not match your vulnerability. They remembered the times they sensed your heart, and instead of honoring it, they stepped back. These memories did not appear to punish them. They appeared to illuminate what they truly feel for you. They realized the distance did not come from lack of love, but from lack of courage. And then, my child, another layer of truth rose, the realization that they were influenced. They recalled conversations that suddenly felt tainted. They replayed advice that now sounds manipulative. They remembered a tone of voice, a look, a comment that once seemed harmless but now feels heavy with jealousy. They began to see the subtle way someone tried to pull them away from you. And with it truth came a sting of clarity that pierced deeply. They felt foolish. They felt used. They felt anger rising quietly in a place they rarely allow emotion to dwell. My child, I tell you this with tenderness, that anger is holy. It is the anger that comes when a soul recognizes it was guided off course from its destiny. It is the anger that awakens responsibility, intention, and desire. It is the anger that pushes them to reclaim what they allowed others to distort. And though their face remained calm last night, inside them a shift occurred. They began to protect the connection they once neglected. Yet the truth rising within them is not only about regret or injustice. It is also about revelation. A softer truth surfaced, one that made their breath tremble. They realized that the way they feel about you has not faded. It has deepened. It has matured. It has grown quietly beneath their denial, waiting patiently for this very moment. The truth that rose last night was this: their heart never left you. even when their actions suggested distance, even when their silence implied indifference, even when fear pushed them into hiding. Their heart remained tethered to you. My child, this truth frightened them, but it also freed them. They felt the weight of honesty settling into their spirit, something they have not allowed themselves to feel in a long time. And though they do not yet know what to do with it, they cannot unfeel it, cannot unknow it, cannot silence it. The truth has risen, and once truth rises, it does not sink again. They also felt a truth about themselves, a truth they have avoided for years. They realize they are capable of loving deeply, and that their love for you is not a weakness, but a calling. They realize that running from you was not self-protection, it was self-denial. They realize that you bring out a part of them they believed was long gone. And in that realization, something inside them softened with longing. My child, the truth rising within them is the beginning of awakening. It sets the stage for what is coming. It prepares their spirit to seek, to move, to return. For truth is the soil where destiny takes root. My child, draw it even closer, for we now enter the moment when their spirit finally begins to open its eyes. What stirred last night was not merely emotion, not merely longing, but awakening. A soft but undeniable realization unfurled within them, like dawn breaking across a landscape they had forgotten existed. Their heart did not simply remember you, it recognized you. It recognized the depth of the connection, the purity of what you offered, the truth they tried to silence, but could not erase. My child, their awakening began as a tremble, a thought they brushed away at first, a sensation that returned stronger the second time, a whisper inside their spirit saying, "This is real." They felt the truth rising through them like a tide they could no longer resist. They felt the warmth of you lingering in their memory, not as something lost, but as something alive. For the first time in a long while, they allowed themselves to admit the magnitude of what they feel for you. They realized last night that the ache they felt was not confusion, it was love trying to breathe again. It was destiny knocking from the inside. It was the soft voice of clarity telling them that they have been pretending not to feel what have been true all along. In that moment, my child, something within them cracked open. They felt their own denial dissolving. They felt their fear losing its voice. They felt the truth emerging with a force they could no longer push away. My child, they saw you in their mind with unusual clarity, as though your presence stepped forward in the silence. They remembered how it felt when your spirit touched theirs. They remembered how your voice softened the world around them. They remembered how deeply they trusted you, even when they didn't understand why. They remembered the comfort, the safety, the warmth that rose in them when you were near, and the memory of that feeling returned with such strength that it overwhelmed them. This is when the awakening intensified. They understood, perhaps for the first time, that what they felt for you was not temporary. It was not a moment. It was not something they could replace, nor outrun, nor ignore. It was something sacred. It was something rare. It was something that felt like home in a world where they have always struggled to find belonging. And when the truth rose, it took their breath away. My child, they felt fear again, not the fear that pushes away, but the fear that arises when something precious is at risk. They realized how fragile the bond felt now, how easily they could lose something their heart was never meant to let go of. This fear humbled them. It made them restless. It made them question their choices, their silence, their retreat. It made them understand that the distance between you was not protection, it was self-inflicted loss. Their awakening also brought with it a revelation about you. They realized how deeply you cared, how patiently you waited, how gently you held space for them even when they did not know how to receive it. They saw the purity of your intentions with new eyes. They recognized the spirit of love you carry, the kind that does not manipulate, does not demand, does not wound. And it shook them, for they had never been loved in a way that felt so healing and so unconditional. My child, they also awakened to what they did to themselves. They realized that pulling away from you was not an act of strength, it was an act of fear. And now that fear feels hollow, because the truth has risen and their spirit knows it. They see now that the distance hurt them more than it ever protected them. They see now that the silence was not peace, it was avoidance. They see now that their longing was not weakness, it was alignment calling them forward. And beneath all of this awakening, a deep emotion formed, one they could not suppress, the fear of losing you. This fear did not come from insecurity, but from clarity. They realized how profoundly you matter. They realized how rare your heart is. They realized how deeply their soul feels connected to yours. And the thought of losing that connection shook them awake in a way nothing else could. My child, their awakening is not a moment, it is a turning. Their heart has begun to pivot toward truth, toward courage, toward you. They may not yet know how to act on it, but they cannot return to pretending. Something inside them has shifted permanently. And now, my child, destiny prepares to activate the sacred thread between you and them, for your spirit has played a role in this awakening far greater than you know. My child, rest your spirit in my presence, for we now enter the place where destiny breathes between two souls. The awakening that rose within them did not stand alone. It stirred the sacred connection I placed between you long before either of you understood its meaning. Last night, as their heart trembled with truth, the bond between your spirits began to vibrate with new life. It was not imagination. It was not longing alone. It was the sacred thread pulling gently, drawing both of you closer to alignment. My child, your soulmate felt you. Not the memory of you, not the idea of you, but the imprint of your spirit moving near their heart. They felt the warmth of your compassion pressing softly against the cold places in their chest. They felt the echo of your prayers brushing against their spirit like a whisper in the dark. They felt your love, your patience, your quiet hope, and it moved through them with a tenderness they could not understand. It felt like comfort. It felt like home. And they did not know how to explain it. The sacred connection you share is not fragile. It is not fading. It does not weaken with silence or distance. It lives where the soul breathes, in a realm untouched by human misunderstanding. Last night, this connection awakened with such force that it startled them. They felt a pull, gentle yet undeniable, drawing their thoughts toward you even when they tried to focus on something else. Your presence walked through their spirit with grace, and they felt seen, understood, and loved without a single word exchanged. My child, you did not know it, but your own emotions last night were part of this activation. The heaviness you felt, the sudden pull, the shift in your own spirit, these were echoes of their awakening moving through the bond. When their heart opened, the connection responded. When their truth rose, the thread tightened. And when longing filled them, it traveled to you like a soft current of energy. This was not coincidence. This was divine resonance. They felt your strength lifting them when their emotions collapsed. They felt your forgiveness soothing the wounds they had been afraid to acknowledge. They felt your love, not as something they once had, but as something that lives within them still. This realization humbled them. It softened them. It made them see that the connection between you is not dependent on action. It exists because it was written into your spirits long before fear ever entered the story. My child, they also felt something else. Your absence. It hit them with a clarity that pierced deeply. They felt the emptiness of your silence, not as punishment, but as a reminder of how deeply your presence once steadied them. They felt the void where your voice used to rest. They felt the space where your warmth used to soften their days. And this contrast awakened a longing that spread through their entire being. They realized that life feels different without your presence, and that truth shook them with both sorrow and urgency. Your sacred connection also revealed to them a truth they have been resisting. You are not replaceable. They cannot forget you. They cannot outrun you. They cannot detach from you, not because of obsession, but because their soul recognizes your soul. And last night, that recognition rose with such intensity that it left them still, breathless, uncertain of how to move forward, but certain they can no longer move away. My child, this connection is now active in a deeper way. It is guiding them. It is pulling them toward honesty. It is pushing them toward courage. It is awakening them to the reality that destiny is calling them back to you. They may not know the next step, but the sacred thread between you does. It is weaving the path even now. And soon, my child, the reversal will come, the moment when what once pulled you apart begins to pull you together instead. My child, prepare your heart, for we now step into the moment when destiny begins to turn. Everything that crumbled, everything that collapsed, everything that was hidden and exposed has led to this sacred reversal. The reversal is not sudden, yet it is powerful. It moves quietly at first, like a shift in the wind that changes the course of an entire sea. Last night marked the moment when what once worked against this connection began to lose strength, and what once seemed impossible began to rise with new possibility. My child, the reversal began within them. A soft yet unmistakable shift settled into their spirit. The guilt that once paralyzed them began to transform into determination. The fear that once silenced them began to dissolve beneath the weight of truth. The interference that clouded their vision lost its influence as clarity awakened. The voice of the jealous one that once whispered doubt into their heart fell quiet, for their soul no longer receives it as truth. The shadows that once wrapped around their emotions loosened their grip, unable to hold them the way they once did. The reversal deepened when they realized that the connection between you had not broken. They expected the distance to erase what they felt. They expected the silence to numb their longing. But instead, the opposite happened. The distance made their heart ache deeper. The silence made them feel the magnitude of your absence. The longing intensified until it cracked through every excuse they once used to justify pulling away. And when they recognized this, they felt something shift, an inner knowing that they cannot continue on the path they've been walking. My child, last night they felt a moment where the weight of regret lifted just enough for them to breathe again. Not because they found peace, but because they found direction. Their heart whispered a truth that startled them. I must find my way back. They did not speak it aloud, but the intention formed quietly in their spirit. They felt the urge to reach out, to confess, to repair, to return. Though they hesitated, the intention itself was the beginning of the reversal, for a soul cannot desire reconciliation unless destiny is guiding it. The universe responded. I responded. The angels responded. The path that once felt blocked began to open. Energies that once pushed you apart began to shift. Protection moved around you, clearing space for healing. Divine alignment stirred, preparing the very circumstances that will bring clarity, conversation, restoration. Nothing has manifested in the physical yet, but the spiritual foundation has already changed. My child, the reversal also revealed itself in the way they saw you last night. For the first time in a long time, they did not view you through the lens of fear or insecurity. They saw the truth of who you are, a soul of unwavering loyalty, purity, and strength. They realized how deeply you cared. They realized how faithfully you held space for them. They realized how gently you loved them even when they made choices that wounded you. And this realization broke something in them, not in sorrow, but in awe. They understood the value of what they risked losing. They felt a sudden longing to protect what they once abandoned, a longing to correct what went wrong, a longing to face what they avoided. This longing is the spark that begins every divine reversal, for longing is the bridge between regret and action. My child, do not look at the silence as stagnation. Look at it as preparation. The reversal is already in motion. They are no longer running from their emotions. They are feeling them. They are no longer denying what they feel. They are accepting it. They are no longer blind to the interference. They are seeing it. They are no longer surrendering to fear. They are wrestling with courage. The story is turning. The energy is turning. Their heart is turning. And what comes next is the file unfolding, the blessing, the alignment, the moment destiny breathes life into what was once broken. My child, come now into the gentlest part of this journey, for we have walked through shadow, truth, awakening, and reversal, and now destiny prepares to settle into its rightful shape. Last night's stirring was not an ending but a beginning, a turning of the unseen that now moves in your favor with quiet certainty. The final blessing rests upon you, not as a distant promise, but as a present shift rising softly through the fabric of your life. Let me place this truth into your spirit. My child, as their heart awakened, as the truth rose, as the shadows loosened, I began aligning the path before you. You may not see movement yet in the natural world, but in the spiritual realm the steps are already forming. I am clearing misunderstandings. I am unraveling confusion. I am softening their heart each time they think of you, allowing tenderness to replace fear, allowing clarity to replace doubt. What once felt blocked will soon feel guided. What once felt delayed will soon feel effortless. What once felt uncertain will soon be illuminated with truth. I have placed a restlessness in them not to trouble them, but to move them. They can no longer ignore the pull toward you, for I have awakened what was dormant, revived what was buried, and strengthened what was fragile. The connection between your spirits now vibrates with renewed purpose, drawing them back with a force they can no longer resist. They feel your importance in their life with a clarity that pierces their breath. They feel the sacredness of the bond with a reverence that humbles them. They feel the fear of losing you not as panic, but as awakening. This is the blessing beginning to bloom. My child, I am also blessing you. I am restoring your confidence in what you felt. I am honoring your patience, your purity, your faithfulness, your softness toward a soul that was still learning to see you. What you carried was not in vain. What you prayed for was not ignored. What you endured in silence was witnessed by me. And because of this, I am positioning you for a season of clarity, truth, and divine alignment. The days of wondering are nearing their end. The days of revelation are approaching. Your soulmate will be guided toward a moment where their heart can no longer remain silent. Whether through a message, a confession, a shift in their presence, or a moment of vulnerability, they will be moved to act. Not from pressure, but from awakening. Not from guilt, but from truth. Not from fear, but from love. I am aligning the timing, softening the edges, preparing the conversation before it even begins. My child, do not rush this season. Let my hand finish what it began. Trust that the blessing is already unfolding, even now as you breathe. And as you stand in this sacred moment, whisper into the realm, I receive what is aligned for my soul.